We're still with. Okay. Recording is in progress. In progress, everybody. So be careful what you say. Anyway, thank you all for joining in, and more and more people are joining in as we speak. So we kick off this webinar by welcoming everybody. We're still waiting for the speakers to join. Ghassan is with us. We're just waiting for His Excellency Fadi Abboud and Mr. Arkan Seblani. I'm sure they'll be with us very soon.
The timing of 6 o'clock coincides with most areas where the electricity goes off and the Wi-Fi system takes a few minutes to get back or something.
توفيق تعرفت على واحدة من بيت السوقي، هي كان بشويفات و 1975 راح درس بشفيلد، وهي مجوزة دكتور من بيت ثابت، بس I don't know who her father was.
I don't know his first name.
ما بتذكر ما بتذكر شو اسمه.
ما يكون أكرم كان بصفنا.
أكرم؟
بتذكر أكرم سوقي كان يقعد حد فواز أبو حسن؟
مزبوط اسمه أكرم.
كان في وجدي.
شافيلد هو؟
نعم.
درس بشافيلد من بعدها.
لا أكرم ما بعرف وين راح بعد منا. I lost touch with him. I haven't seen him since leaving school. I asked after him many times, but we never managed to get through to him. But I think he ended up in Venezuela.
Oh yeah.
Hi Mirna. Hi Tatiana. Hi Emil.
So Arkan, 2-3 minutes.
Arkan just joined us. Like to welcome Arkan. Nice to see you with us.
هاي دكتور، بس أنا عاملين لي ميوت على التليفون عشان هيك. Miss you. Okay. Good luck.
Thank you. Fadi.
خلينا نشوف فادي عبود.
Let's see what's happening to Fadi Abboud.
I am calling him, okay?
He's trying to call me. He must have a problem or something. Hi Hassan. Hey, hi.
Hello Doc, كيفك? Hello everyone.
Okay, Fadi Abboud will be with us very soon, and we should start in 1 minute. Okay. I think we should start. I'd like to welcome you all to this series of webinars. And our webinars are usually they take a subject of the moment, and we try to go into the details of these subjects. In recent times, we've concentrated a lot about COVID because it was an issue that is a global issue that everybody wanted to know about it. And we've also touched on the situations with regards to the economy in Lebanon. This was at the end of last year, and with regards to the issues that were raised by the Bank of Lebanon. Today's subject is something that is probably the most important subject that we have tackled so far, and transparency is key for our future. And as you know, today we have 3 speakers who are all involved in this subject. You all know His Excellency Abboud, who is an alumni from Shoifet. He is from year 72. And Fadi Abboud has been extremely involved in the alumni. He was the president of the committee previously. And he's been very supportive to our activities. I would like to introduce Mr. Arkan Seblani, who is non-alumni, but we welcome him. Mr. Arkan Seblani, head of the regional team for anti-corruption and integrity in the Arab countries, and he's with the UNDP. He has nearly 20 years of experience in the UN supporting reform efforts in more than 20 countries. So we're going to look at the global issues that Arkan has experienced. We're going to look at the local issues that His Excellency Fadi Abboud has been preaching about. And we'd like to introduce one of our alumni from year 75, Ghassan Abdel, who's a friend, a very close friend of mine for many years. But Ghassan in recent years have been very much involved into this issue, and specifically with regards to transparency and where it is going to take us. So I'd like to hear from the speakers in general. I'd like to start with the local issues. I'd like to invite His Excellency Fadi Abboud to start, and then we will follow with Mr. Arkan Seblani, where he can go on the global, and then he can comment on His Excellency's thoughts. And then last but not least, Ghassan Abdel Khalek's approach from a different angle, where he is looking at the end result of this issue. I think it's going to be a fabulous webinar, and thank you all for joining. So can I please invite His Excellency Fadi Abboud to kick off the debate.
Good evening. If I may, I would like to begin from the end. I'm trying to say simply, if we do not adopt total transparency and open data, it's going to be virtually impossible to reform Lebanon. I mean every word said, and let me explain. At this moment in time, we are experiencing a very difficult situation, as I'm sure you are aware. But let us try to understand, how did we get here? Let's try to understand the last 30 years. And we all agree that there's nothing transparent in the country, nothing at all whatsoever. And this is a problem, because it's not just, a question of people who are in control or governing the country. The butcher is not transparent. The mechanic is not transparent. I don't know about doctors. I'm not allowed to talk about doctors. But really what I'm trying to say is that we need to change the way we look at things. We need to drastically change how we vote and what do we expect from our members of parliament. We need to start by adopting transparency and teaching the importance of transparency in our schools, something which is not happening. You know, we are still living in the last century, maybe the 50s and 60s of the last century, whereby there's something in Arabic called sir maslaha, whereby like you have this little secret you should always keep, and people should not know, you know, what you are doing, what you are specifically when it comes to public issues. Up until now, you know, most of our ministers or ministries rather try to hide the way things are done from expenses, even if you know, when we have a public auction, you cannot get the information as freely as you can get it in other countries. But let's go back to reform and how important it is to have transparency if we are serious about reforming this country. Without transparency, sorry? Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Great. Without transparency, it's going to be very difficult, you know, to avoid corruption. Corruption is a way of life in Lebanon. And it is so clear if someone is interested and is trying to find out what exactly is happening, you can, but it will be very, very difficult because nothing is transparent. Anything to do with public money, there is something which is not clear. I don't know honestly from where to start, but if you check each and every ministry in this country, you know, we have a serious problem with monopolies. You have the monopoly, let's say, of the airline, of the casino. We have a monopoly in producing. So all these monopolies, if you really check them, there is nothing transparent in these monopolies. And if you are interested in going and digging deep, you will find out that there is a lot of money being wasted, and people behind these monopolies, they don't know what they're on about. As I said, take the casino de Lebanon. Why in the hell should Lebanon have one casino? Either we accept gambling or we don't. If we accept gambling, you know, this should be like any other country in the world, like Britain, for example, where you can have hundreds of casinos, for example, or betting shops and so on and so forth. This is a monopoly, and then you have like electronic gambling, and again, you know, it is all hidden, and you will never be able to get deep on what's happening there. The airport, Beirut Airport, the Middle East Airlines. Are you people aware, for example, that a ticket now between here and Cyprus, business class is about $500. 250 of these dollars are in principal taxes, but taxes are paid in Lebanese liras. Okay, the taxes in so try to ask a question. Why are you charging us the taxes in Lebanon in US dollars, fresh US dollars? You'll never get an answer. I asked these questions like more than 10 years ago when I served as a minister for tourism in this country. And since then, you know, taxes are, they collect taxes when in real fact it's not taxes, it's fuel surcharge, and they call it a tax. This is a very simple example. I have hundreds of such examples. You know, we don't have the time to go through all the details, but again, I at the risk of repeating myself, without transparency, it's going to be very, very, very difficult to get rid of corruption and to start building, you know, a transparent society. I would rather, you know, answer questions, because I'm sure a lot of you will have so many questions in mind. I think this is enough for an introduction, and I'm ready to answer any questions you have.
if I may say, let's hear from Arkan to follow up on your introduction, and we will be I'm very interested to hear solutions. His Excellency Fadi Abboud has outlined a number of issues that have been embedded in our society, in our culture, in our community, in our politicians, and we would like to see a way out of this, and we'd like to see solutions. And Arkan has been with the UNDP. He has been to many different countries with similar problems as ours, and we'd love to hear from Arkan's point of view.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to join. I'm not an alumni, yes, true, but I have so many friends and family who are, so I kind of feel like I am alumni. So thank you for the invitation. It's really, like you said, Dr. Tawfiq, it's a very important topic. It is important not because it's simply an ethical issue or a matter of good or bad. It is very important because actually transparency is the antidote for two things that are found in life. One is the human inclination to be private and personal and not wanting to share. Like, Minister Abboud was saying, knowledge is power, information is power. So there is usually a human inclination that people don't want to share. I'm not saying that everyone, but generally speaking. The other problem that we find around us is the institutional legacy in most countries. And I say most countries, including developed countries, where people in government institutions also, the way laws and systems are put in place are not very, let's say, are not very geared towards transparency. So transparency is the antidote for those two challenges that we find around us in all countries in different degrees. Certainly in Lebanon and in countries like Lebanon, they are at a higher level than in other countries. And what those two problems create is asymmetry of information. And asymmetry of information is a real problem at many levels. One, at the societal level, because a person who knows how to get certain, let's say, who knows how to get around an administration, knows people who can provide information, can have maybe better access to services. Whereas a person who doesn't have this connection or, wasta or insider information would probably spend much more time trying to get the same service which he or she is entitled to. It's also a problem at the business level because asymmetry of information creates a major obstacle to attract investment, creates asymmetry information between businesses wanting to compete, and therefore definitely undermines the business climate and the ability to compete and therefore attract both investments and create jobs. Third, it's a problem at the political level because, again, those who are in the know, those who are able to access information because of privileged positions, because of party affiliation or other kinds of affiliations, will have a much bigger competitive advantage to get into politics and stay into politics. And therefore, through this asymmetry of information, they will have a vested interest to maintain it so that they can also maintain their competitive edge. It's really a problem at all those levels. It's not simply a good or bad thing, an ethical thing. It is actually a very utilitarian developmental problem, which that we face across the world in varying degrees. Having said that, it's important to understand that the global dialogue on transparency has been evolving and is continuing to evolve. We have not reached a point where we know exactly what needs to be done, and there are perfect examples all around the world that we can just adapt and adopt and adapt to our country. There are many good practices, many bad practices, many challenges. The discourse is evolving. Yes, countries like Sweden adopted the first access to information law back in the 1760s, but it took the world, until the Human Rights Declaration in 1948 to include access to information and transparency as part of the human rights agenda back in the 40s of the last century. Then that manifested itself in other human rights instruments. And then until 2003, where it became also a key part of the UN Convention Against Corruption. So again, transparency is not only an anti-corruption tool, it's also a human rights tool, it's also a business tool, and it's also a tool to enhance development across the board. Now, as we speak about access to information, the concept itself evolves. It's not only about people having the right to request information and get it, but also the government having an obligation, even the private sector having obligation to proactively disclose information depending on the situation. So access to information, or the right to information, has been evolving, and it is evolving. And perhaps one global initiative that is interesting to take note of, which Lebanon has been trying to join but has not succeeded to do yet, is the OGP, the Open Government Partnership, which has been, was set up more, by in 2008 or 9, if I recall correctly, and then it kind of took shape in the beginning of this last decade, triggered by a US-Brazilian global initiative, and it evolved now. Countries in the region that are members include Tunisia, Morocco, and Jordan. Like I said, Lebanon has been trying but hasn't been able to accumulate the requisite number of points needed to join. So it is still needed to take some steps in order to join. And what this initiative does, it creates a kind of like standards and works with countries to achieve and maintain these standards. So that's my first point was on the importance of this concept. The second point was on the continuous evolution of the global dialogue on transparency. And my third point is on what we've learned and on how to make this tangible, actionable, on how to make transparency a concrete action-oriented agenda, not simply talk on a TV show or announcement of principles or slogans. How to actually make it a reality in a country like Lebanon. There is a tendency in many countries to treat these reform issues as a zero-sum game. Either we have it or we don't have it. And I think while from an activist point of view, it's important to maintain the passion and the strong call for maximum transparency. From a policy point of view, it's very important to understand that all countries in the world have went through progressions. What is the right progression for Lebanon? Let's have that debate. How can we trigger it? How can we foster it? That's also open for debate. Lebanon has adopted the Access to Information Law in 2017, and the law, which was initially limited to requesting information, was expanded to include proactive disclosure. And since the law was adopted, administrations did not react, but we saw civil society step in and stress test institutions into publishing or be complying more. We are still at very low levels of compliance. There is some slow improvement, very little compared to what is needed, but still the pressure needs to be maintained. I would caution against not seeing the cumulative effect of reforms and the approach. I would say that it's important to, whatever was won in the last 2-3 years, to maintain and build over it. So one key solution is really to work as the public with civil society to continue stress testing the public administration and publishing information on their compliance, and using reputational incentives and reputational risks, which are now interconnected also with the global and the discussion with the international partners on reforms. I think that can have some impact, not maybe today, but down the road. I think it's also important to recognize, and I'm about to finish and close, to recognize that the discussion in Lebanon about anti-corruption, if you open any TV, if you get into any taxi, if you speak to anyone, if you speak to politicians, it is very adversarial. It's about, you are corrupt, no, he is corrupt. The case is not taken to court, the case is taken to court. I would advocate for shifting the paradigm when it comes to this discussion on anti-corruption. In countries where institutions are systemically weak and the rule of law is virtually non-existent, depending on law enforcement as the principal tool to achieve results is going to be always in jeopardy. So what I'm suggesting is if there can be enough collective action to shift the discourse, instead of shooting accusations at each other, the politicians, you are corrupt, no, you are corrupt. Maybe we should also push so that they tell us if they implemented the access to information law, what have you done as a minister in your ministry? Shifting the paradigm is key in order to also reduce the margin of maneuver, because now the margin of maneuver is huge. People can have a billion excuse for not sharing information. Oh, we're not digitalized, or there is no electronic signature, or there is no, it was like there's no implementation decree for access to information. I think it's important to reduce the margin of maneuver. So I would also, my pre-final point on digitalization. The governments consecutively, in the past 4 or 5 governments, have refused to adopt a coherent strategy on digitalization. They fragment the discourse on digitalization. They make it a ministry by ministry, a department by department project. They projectize transparency. And that's a major problem, because even if we have automated administrations, if they don't speak to each other, if they don't share information with each other, we have done nothing. We have just created more shops and more complexity. Finally, and that's the final point, I think it's also very important to understand it's a cultural issue. And that's why, with the education systems, universities, but at even earlier ages, to instill these principles and ideas of transparency, not as matters of ethics and morality, but as a public good without which Lebanon will neither recover nor reform. Thank you very much. I hope this was a good, a useful start, and I'm happy to elaborate further as we take the discussion steps ahead.
Thank you, Arkan, for bringing out all of these points. One quick question: in Lebanon, you're a lawyer and you've got this background. Do we actually have legislations, and if we that enforces transparency? And if we do have it, is it enforced in any way?
In order to speak about transparency, there are 2 types of legislation. There are the principal, like major legislation, and then you have so many articles spread across the bodies of law. In Lebanon, the access to information law adopted in 2017 is not perfect, but it has a lot of good components. However, there is this kind of cynicism in Lebanon, which masquerades as wisdom. I will repeat it. There is this kind of cynicism in Lebanon, which masquerades as wisdom. And, that gives the politician a carte blanche to undermine any obligation that is put forward. And the public doesn't believe that things can move forward, and therefore does not hold or create enough pressure. So there is a law. It is not perfect. I think Lebanon needs to join the OGP and implement, develop a full action plan to promote transparency. There are the law was passed on e-transactions, but it is not sufficient, and the decrees have not been published, developed yet and adopted. And even the laws that is adopted, which is access to information, I would say that implementation is not more than 5%, and that's like a very low. That's, if at all we can create a percentage. It's just like saying it in a soft way. So in other words, I think politicians in Lebanon have managed so far to make this issue so big that no one is starting from somewhere concrete. And my plea to you is, let us not make it also very big. It is big, but let's break it into manageable chunks that we can advocate and push, taking advantage of the current situation in the country, like locally, but also the relationship with the international community in Lebanon.
Thank you.
If I may, we have الحق في الوصول قانون الحق في الوصول إلى المعلومات, the right to access information. مشروط هذا القانون بالصفة والمصلحة. You've got to be involved. الصفة والمصلحة. which means it is not a workable law. So if you want to ask for any information from any minister, you've got to prove as-sifa wal-maslaha. And this by itself actually killed the law. That is why we presented a new law. Total transparency. الشفافية المطلقة والبيانات المفتوحة. Total transparency. You don't need to have a sifa or a maslaha. You don't need to be involved. You don't need to be anything. You have the right to access any information to do with public money. We have to be very careful. We're not talking about the private lives of anyone. The information to do with public money. This law we presented and signed by, I don't know, 10 MPs, but still for the last 3 months, nothing has happened. I can give you examples of laws been waiting to be argued like for, I don't know, 15 years. So the very few people do understand what we really mean by transparency. And at the end of the day, no one wants to be transparent, specifically people in power. So the law which is in action now is utterly and completely useless.
I think this brings us to the point where I would like Ghassan's input. And we've had many discussions about the subject. And Ghassan's attitude is, rather than just viewing again and again all the problems that we have, let's start from a point where we can make a difference and improve the situation that we are in. Ghassan, the floor is yours. Ghassan, you need to put on your mic. It's mute. Yeah.
You can hear me now, right?
Yes.
I just want to go quickly. First of all, Dr. Tufi, is this an hour, 1 hour webinar?
Yes. We've got another half an hour to go.
Well, okay. In that case, let me just quickly.
Can't use all of it.
No, I'll be as quick as I can. I just wanted to, you see, Mr. Fadi has put this law back in I think September 2019. He's quickly summed up what about the existing law and what Mr. Seblani is saying about how to go gradually. These are all relevant. Fadi almost tutored me into the nitty-gritties of transparency as far as how it goes constitutionally, etc. And we did try about 2 months trying to overcome the hurdles. In a nutshell, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, speaking more about the need for transparency is summed by one sentence. Advanced democracies who had in place major anti-corruption mechanisms ended up needing what Mr. Abboud is saying, total transparency, with a difference. You don't need to seek it. It's pushed in your face. You don't even need to ask for it. You just press a button. In Lebanon, anything else will not work. Graduality will not work. Okay, it will not work because the system is designed in such a way. مراسيم تطبيقية وغير مراسيم تطبيقية والمواطن ليس ذو صفة ياخذ هذا. You can't change them by international pressure. And let me be clear what I mean by this. CEDAR was a $13 billion subject to certain redressement, certain adjustments by the government. Didn't happen. Now the World Bank or the IMF or something, they wanted some sort of audit. It's been 18 months of the utmost crisis that New Lebanon has ever lived, and we still cannot deliver. We cannot count on any of members of this respectable lot who has taken the country over the last decades to where we are now. So, because time is short, and because people involved with transparency have lived it all through. All I want to say is this: you can't talk any more than what some convinced or conscientious politicians, our friend Minister Abboud and others who have taken the podiums even on different subjects and spoken about all the nitty-gritties about transparency. Still, the public listened and nothing is happening. So I was hoping to take what I'm saying and what the gentlemen have said. What we cannot build for the future now. We are in a critical crisis. We are, in my reading, we are down a slope that the most probable visible situation is we're not going to get out of it. So there is an opportunity related to time. Currently, we are still losing. If you take everything that's been said over the last year and a half, on TVs, on political debates, etc., 90% of the time would have disappeared مثل ما قال Mr. Arkan, as transparency was there. Because it's all debate about what happened, what didn't happen. ما حدا من الشعب اللبناني knows anything about gas, the gas deals, and suddenly we are dished all of a sudden, this was happening and we are here. To cut it short and come to what I'm after, what I'm seeking, what I'm urging for. We are not just in a crisis economically. We are not just in a crisis of corruption. We are in a crisis of existence, and we are in a crisis of the country is being pushed into conflict for the at least since last June, at least, and it has failed until now. What is programmed to us, we're not going to debate that politically, okay? And I don't know all the details of it, but we're going somewhere bad. Suddenly, we have to use every single potential we have. Transparency heading into elections, where candidates normally promise the whole world to electors. And we have a problem, if really the civil section, القطاع المدني المستقلين, are going to get any relevant seats, the elections will not happen. This is the Lebanon we are living in. Compounded, but what Minister Abboud started by saying about the ethics of us as a nation, of every single one of us. We cannot do it all now. Without transparency, we can't even plan. إذا عبكرة جبنا 12 angels, specialists, بكل شيء, they can't even start. They can't start anywhere. There is nothing. We don't have statistics properly. We can't have reliable statistics. We don't believe. There's nothing. So I think the single most important building block for a potential Lebanon that might happen should be within the constitution, should be total transparency, irrespective of what the governance of this country becomes. Whether it's a kingdom, whether it's a communism, whatever it is, we need transparency. Now, what is critical now? What is critical now is how to avoid violent conflict, okay, before the elections by using transparency. But one tool. And this is apolitical. It is not directed towards anyone. It's not directed to any political party, to any religion, to any faction, to any belief, to any philosophy. This is purely saying that the history of governance in this country has failed. Has failed because of stealing, has failed because of incompetency, has failed because of many things, but it has failed. And we, the public, need to emphasize that looking at the parliamentary members that you have selected and voted for, what we have seen in the last now that everybody talks, the least you should ask him, say, why the hell didn't you tell us? We are your constituents. Why didn't you tell us? Now, this is spilled milk. I was hoping, because I have failed, and many people who were trying to push this have failed. We tried at one stage, and Fadi knows, we've tried to actually get current ministers, current parliament members to sign outside parliament لما كان البارلمنت مسكر وساحة النجمة وغيره a declaration saying I the undersigned member of parliament كذا I engage irrevocably that I want the law on total transparency, okay, to be the first law to be discussed on the first meeting of parliament. مثلا هلا أنا what I hope for is that we can reach. We need crowdsourcing from the brilliant minds of Sabis graduates over 3-4 generations in Wati to actually come up with solutions that we can reach inside the brains and the conscious of not just the normal citizen. Before the normal citizen is the supporter of different political parties. This would mean that I would go to the members in my area and say, look, everybody, when we talk about transparency, طلعوا على التلفزيونات كل الناس طالبين transparency من الخمسينات ومن الستينات ومن السبعينات كلهم طالبين transparency والممحوقه طلعت باخر قانون اللي طلع recently اللي it's worth nothing. It's worth simply nothing. Okay? To go into the brains and of the electorate, people who are going to vote, so that they will actually demand and then look at what those people who promised them delivered. The promise of any candidate into the new, whether انتخابات مبكرة أو بعدين, the promise should be the following: I, the undersigned, Tufi, I'm going into parliament, and the first act that we will achieve before anything else should be the law on total transparency.
I think
we need to understand this is a saving mechanism, a diffusing mechanism, and an urgent breath of oxygen for a possible survival of Lebanon.
Thank you very much for this very important point. The thing is, we need to see how we can implement it. So we are talking about a manifesto that is imposed on the candidates for the members of parliament, and it is you are enforcing a manifesto upon them, and it is a precondition before you vote, and this will go across all parties, which is an excellent idea. Now let's look of how we can implement that. Maybe if I can ask Arkan and Minister Abboud, of should we have a law in place, or should we have a manifesto in place to say this is what we want and where we will get all the candidates to sign up on it, and so that we can vote?
Listen, Tufi, if I may, we can only address the people. The politicians, I've given up on them. It's rather impossible because you are asking them to commit suicide, something which they are not going to do. I sent the new law to the 128 MPs. I dare tell you, no one, not even one, read it, because the people I was able to speak to, they didn't even know that they received it. So, forget the existing politicians. What we need is to address the people and to ask them, never ever vote for any candidate unless he declares publicly that this law, he will adopt this law and he will vote for this law. I think our aim should be not the politicians, but the people.
100%, yes.
Okay, Arkan.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. First, let me start by saying that I don't think that what's being presented is mutually exclusive. Let me just first say that, and let's make this debate interesting and maybe some action. Technically, the law does not, I disagree respectfully with what has been said. It does not require صفة ومصلحة. The مجلس الشورى الدولي require شورى مصلحة لمن يريد مراجعة مجلس الشورى الدولي من أجل يعني بس خليني القانون لا
Mr.
قانون-
Arkan, please, Mr. Arkan.
Yes, sir.
Minister Abboud, trust me, has lived this. At least I know of 8
Sir,
weeks.
Ghassan,
Sorry.
Ghassan. I respect. I'm saying my opinion. I was in the. Not only did I live this, I was in in the sessions discussing this. I was there when Minister Abboud attended in 5 December 2013 in the Parliament, saying let's have also proactive disclosure. I followed the nitty-gritties of it. I'm not parachuting into this. The law does not require صفة مصلحة. The law does, and even now there is, and the مجلس الشورى الدولي requires مصلحة من أجل مراجعة مجلس الشورى الدولي في
أمين عام مجلس الوزراء كتب لحدا سأل السؤال.
تم تعديل كل هذا الموضوع. هو كتبوا موضوع داير عمار، موضوع داير عمار
بس تاخذ الموضوع ما هو بالقانون الحالي في لبنان قبل الحق في الوصول إلى المعلومات، بالقوانين المرعية الإجراء، أنت ما فيك تقيم دعوة إذا ما عندك صفة مصلحة. هيدا الشيء ورتنينه من الفرنسوية which is totally ridiculous in the 21st century. إن أنت ما فيك تعمل كلاس أكت بلبنان.
أنا فاهمين بس لو تسمحوا لي بس كمل الفكرة وبعدين.
لا بدي أكون يعني إذا بتكمل الفكرة.
لا هو أنا عندي رأي،
ولكن
لا طب ما خليني أكمل.
خلينا نسمع أركان شوي. كفي بليز.
Sorry, I insist. And this is not my position. This is the position of the UN on this law. وهذا البوزيشن of the review on this law. القانون لا يتطلب صفة ومصلحة. حاول بعض الإداريين التذرع بالصفة والمصلحة من أجل عدم إعطاء المعلومات. تحتاج صفة ومصلحة من أجل مراجعة مجلس الشورى الدولي، صحيح، لأن هذا بالقانون المنظم لعمل مجلس الشورى الدولي. إنما القانون وبالمرسوم يلي طلع المرسوم التطبيقي، لما طلع الجواب تبع الرئيس أمين عام مجلس الوزراء القاضي محمود مكي كان قبل صدور المرسوم. صدر المرسوم وكمان لزيادة بالتوضيح في يعني proposed amendment قدمه النائب جورج عايس لحتى كمان يقطع الشك باليقين بهذا الموضوع. هلا having said that أنا مني against، يعني حتى أكون واضح، لأنه إذا واحد بده يقدم فكرة سياسية مثل عم تقدموها بده كمان يكون careful إنه ما تكون قابلة للنقد من منظور تقني. فأنا بس عم بقول إنه they're not mutually exclusive. أنا I'm the first one who's willing to support the full transparency law. I haven't seen it. I'm happy to look at it. And definitely مثل ما بيقولوا زيت على زيتون سمنة على يعني. بالتالي أنا حبيت أوضح هذه النقطة. اثنين، المشكلة بالقانون access information مش النص القانوني، فما بدنا نوقع نحن بنفس الخطأ بتقديم قانون ثاني ويكون النص القانوني كمان جيد بل ممتاز بس نرجع على الواقع اللي بيمنع تطبيق هذا القانون. مشان هيك اللي عم يقترحوا غسان انه ضغط مجتمعي collective action crowdsourcing لنفكر بافكار complementary is very important and very complementary to it. وبدي اختم بفكره. انا بكل تجربتي وتخصصي بهالموضوع و my own responsibility وما عم بحكي هون بصفتي الشخصيه، ما في دولة بالعالم عملت الترانزيشن تنكون واقعيين بين opacity مثل موجود بلبنان وترانسبيرنسي بإصدار قانون. It takes ages, many years to transition. What is our plan for transition? مشان هيك اللي عم بيقولوا غسان is part of a transition plan and the law is part of the transition plan and pushing for the implementation of the existing law should be part of the transition plan. يا جماعة it's not a zero-sum game. انتبهوا, I think we are playing into the hands of the politician who will legislate this law. هل نحن الالتزامات عندنا تبع النواب بالحملات الانتخابية تطبق بالمجلس النيابي بعد الانتخابات؟ خلينا نكون كمان أيضا واقعيين ونعتبر there's no silver bullet. We need several weapons to promote this transition. That's my message.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Okay. May I please? القانون المعمول فيه اليوم بيمنع اعطاء اي معلومات رح ارجع اكرر عن معاشات الببليك سيكتور. عم تسمعني؟ بيمنع اعطاء اي معلومات عن معاشات الببليك سيكتور. كيف هذا القانون يعني بدنا نقبل فيه. كيف هذا بده يكون يعني خطوة أولى؟ القانون أولا ما صدر مع مراسيمه التنفيذية. مراسيمه التنفيذية are very vague. حكينا بموضوع الصفة والمصلحة. هل عم قل لك في بند بالقانون ما لك حق تسأل قديش الموظف بالقطاع العام بيقبض؟ كيف بيكون هذا قانون صالح حتى لو ترانزيتوري بيريد؟ هذا قانون
I think بده يرد علينا على هالشيء هذا.
أجان قراءة مجتزأة للقانون سيدي العزيز. تستثنى الرواتب من النشر الحكمي. خلينا نقرا القانون كامل، ما نقرا مجتزأ. صحيح في القانون
إذا كان تستثنى من النشر الحكمي ليه؟
اوكي هذا
بطل هيدا ترانسبيرنسي. المعاشات العامة تستثنى من النشر الحكمي. طيب وإذا أنا سألت بيجاوبني إنه ما لك صفة ومصلحة. هيدا القانون بالعكس هو تضييع وقت. وأنا هيدا القانون بعتبره إنه مثل ما أنت شرحت، يعني هيدا القانون معمول تضيع وقت ونقول للعالم ونقول لليونايتد نيشنز إنه نحن عندنا قانون. هيدا القانون لحديت اليوم ما قدرت حصلت على أي معلومة بناء على هيدا القانون.
Gentlemen, Mr. Dr. Tawfiq, there was a simple statement that I made. I said we need a transparency law, which is already, the draft is there, and Mr. Arkan will get it from Minister Abboud. And let's put this please to one side. You don't seek information and transparency. You are dished information. It's the government obligation to make it available. It is not for the citizen to ask for it. برات هيك تركيب اللبنانيه اوكي والاخلاق السياسيه والببليك ادمنستريشن بلبنان بتقضي انه نطلب هالشيء ما نطلب شيء ثاني. This is not transition. This is defining the ABC. So for the moment, I urge and I beg you gentlemen, everybody, let us go to the message we are coming to give to ask of the alumni. The crowdsourcing. We need help on many sectors in many fields. إخراج, إنتاج, تفكير, critical thinking, video making, concise messages. We need help because we are dying. Lebanon is dying. The least you can expect is a change of the Lebanon we know. This is in the best scenarios. So we need to actually tell the audience that this is so important and their help is paramount. Okay? The speakers have given their best. Okay? Time is critical. Time is passing. Okay? There is let's not go into any further debate about whether transparency is needed or not.
No.
Let's accept that we are in critical care and we need some ingenuity into how to go into the brains تبع كل مواطن وخاصة الحزبي. اوكي الحزبي اللي مصدق انه انا عندي حزب وانا يا لطيف محل مدري مين. اوكي طب على القليله بده يقول لي ليش مستحي تتبشي هيدا الترانسبيرنسي اللي ما بده اللي عمله هو مستر عبود خينا فادي does not require, it's a trick, it's a strategy, does not require مراسيم تطبيقيه.
صحيح.
So please let us just concentrate on that for God's sake لنبطل في وقت.
Let's hear the last few comments from Minister Abboud and then from Arkan with regards to this point.
Listen, I mean, arguing if this is the right law or not, or if this is a transitory law whereby we start like practicing transparency. It is not. It is not. The most important thing, as Ghassan stressed so many times, you don't need to ask for the information. Once you start this game of asking for the information in this country, that is it, you failed. They will come up with so many tricks in their hat, you know, they have so many tricks in their hat. We should not at all advocate a law whereby you need to ask for the information. The information should be available for everyone to see. Every single ministry or monopoly or public monopoly has to publish everything they do, total, utter, complete transparency and open data. If we fail with such a law, it will be virtually impossible. I could not receive any information at all whatsoever from like the port of Beirut, Middle East Airlines, the airport. They come back to say, we are a private company. Imagine MEA saying that we are a private company. No, public money was used to start this company. You are not a private company. So the law, the existing law will not, and you know, we will remind each other, will not work in any way or form. We need a new law whereby information is automatically published and people who are interested can access this information freely. Short of that, we will just be wasting time as we've been doing for the last few years. I worked with this, with the existing law. I failed, I repeat, I failed to get any information in any way or form.
But I must say that, Mr. Abboud, you have been very instrumental in this. We've seen you on many podiums. You have been, يعني أنت رأس الحربة بهالموضوع هيدا throughout. And we really appreciate this. Can I please hear from Arkan his closing comments before we close?
Thank you. Anna, I want to join you, Dr. Tawfiq, in congratulating the Minister Abboud and Ghassan for the passionate plea. And I don't disagree with them. I don't disagree that there could be a better law that we need to go for full transparency today, not tomorrow. We definitely agree. My only plea is the following. One, the lack of compliance with the law, the current law, is not related to the text of it only, or it is related to a political situation. A law, therefore, one must not put all the eggs in the basket of a law, and to understand that there are many different tools to pressure for this. Second, maybe I or you or Minister Abboud didn't get information, but I have several cases, I don't want to say in the hundreds, of people who did get information. So again, my point, again, I'm not defending a law saying this is perfect. I'm just trying to say my plea, it's not a zero-sum game. In my opinion, playing it as a zero-sum game will play into the hand of the status quo. This is my own opinion. I think whatever we can get, ما لا يدرك كله لا يترك جله. I think my only point is to be realistic, to push for the ideal, and to understand that no country in the world made the transition instantaneously. And if we, and please, this is the last idea, if we raise our expectations too high and we don't achieve them, we are paving the way for total frustration and for total devastation. We need to manage our expectations. It's very important in engineering change in society to manage expectations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arkan. We went through this subject in details. We don't have much time for questions from the audience, but I think we'll take 3 questions. If anybody from the audience have got any questions to the panel, please go ahead and just say it out.
I have a question, if I may. Can I ask Mr. Arkan?
Okay.
إذا حصل على أي information من وراء القانون الموجود الحق في الوصول للمعلومات? Did you manage to get any information, and did you check if this information was correct?
Arkan, you need to unmute.
Yes. I would refer you to the report of the Ghirbal initiative, مبادرة Ghirbal, which is
I read the report.
Okay, so they mentioned what information they were able to get, which information they weren't able to get. And you will find that most of the information they didn't get is from organizations that politically don't want to give information, not because the law does not allow it.
But they couldn't force them, could they?
No, exactly.
By the power of the law, they couldn't force them. So
look, there are judicial decisions, agree, but there are judicial decisions that are not being respected.
Dr. Tawfiq.
Okay, Ghassan.
Forgive
Great.
me. Forgive me. I'm not sure if the audience. I want to know. We did not get ample time or ample clarity to actually tell the audience that we need their help. I mentioned it in one sentence, okay, and I don't know what you're going to do about this. This is very important. I respect the importance of correcting each other, but you know the main جوهر تبع القصة about timing, the criticality of timing, okay. We didn't even achieve it in the webinar. You know, it's very complicated.
This webinar within the hour, it will be difficult to achieve all of that, but it gives you awareness. This will stimulate a lot of the alumni where they can pitch in and help, and we may be able to have a maybe.
Time is against us. Time is against us.
I think what Ghassan is trying to propose is maybe some sort of crowdfunding or crowdsourcing platform.
Crowdsourcing, not funding.
Through which alumni can contribute their skills and their knowledge to promote this idea and compel politicians to see the value. Correct, Ghassan? Did I help?
Yes. Yes, thank you very much.
This is something that Ghassan and I discussed before, and we are hoping.
It's a great idea. It's really a great idea.
To go ahead with that, and Ghassan has came up with ideas with promoting the transparency through videos, through cartoons, through through the social media, etc. So this will need to put together.
That's very important.
It's very important. Needs to put together a force, a human force to be able to go ahead with it. We are working on it. We will do our best. We will do what we can.
If among the alumni there are professionals in producing such short videos, it will be very, very important. We need their help.
Well,
absolutely.
The time has gone very fast. The hour is over, and I'm afraid it's going to be difficult to take any more questions. We didn't allow you to take questions. Anyway, I thank you all for joining in, and I thank the speakers. I thank you, Mr. Abboud. I thank you, my friend Ghassan, and the biggest thank is to Arkan Seblani. You've been wonderful, and I would like you to accept the title of an honorary alumni among us.
It's my honor, and if you do this crowdsourcing platform, I'm happy to contribute.
I think we will be doing that and hear from us soon. Okay, thank you all. I think we'll bring this webinar to a close, and let's hope you will all be with us next month. Next month, we've got another very good webinar about starting up businesses and the like. But we will give you more information about that as soon as possible, as soon as we have.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.